We're going to be speaking with Dr. Joy Pugh here in a few moments, but I gave her a call and I asked her to come on at the bottom of the hour instead of the top of the hour because I want to talk to you about the experience that I've had. And I'm actually writing up an article on it. I haven't written it in full yet, but there is some pretty interesting information here. So I'm going to read what I've written as far as this article goes, and then I'll just say the rest off the top of my head. In January of 2014, I embarked upon a quest into the hyperspace realm of ayahuasca with a plan to explore this realm on a weekly basis to see what doors may open. Life, however, got in the way, and this plan was impeded upon by the fate of the universe. 8 months later, I journeyed again into the realm of the unknown, and what I brought back with me has changed me to the core. I have become the shaman, at least in the textbook definition. A shaman is defined as a person regarded as having access to and influence in the world of good and evil spirits, especially among some people of Northern Asia and Northern America. Typically, such people enter a state of trance during a ritual and practice divination and healing. William Whitecrow saw the shaman in me from early on and even greeted me with a secret handshake of the initiated, even though I had not yet come to the realizations I have now. However, if time isn't really an illusion and everything is happening simultaneously, then he greeted me as I am today or as I will be tomorrow, not as I was at the time of the greeting or the meeting. This realization is really a feeling of duality because on one hand, I think to myself, who am I? I'm just some guy with a microphone. On the other hand, I have to embrace the role that I've been endowed with. At first, I had a hard time understanding why I was being shown the things I was being shown so quickly. Part of me feels a sense of unworthiness because I have not earned this knowledge through discipline or practice, but rather it was thrust upon me for a purpose greater than I. The higher self, the higher part of me, however, understands that there is a reason for this. We are at the threshold of a global war that is being waged on the spiritual and physical planes, and we must all unite right now, hone our energies, and prepare for this final act. This is what we are being called together for. Do we have the will to do it, or have we come this far only to fail now? We must unite what has been set asunder. The things I've seen and the bombardment of nonstop tests I've endured over the last few days has been more endlessly swirling than the vortex of the void. Physical connections have been drawn together by energetic forces in the astral realm, pulling energies together with the brute force of destiny. Free will is indeed an illusion because we have now become passengers on the wheel of fate rocketing towards our dharma. For this is why we have been called. In January of 2014, I embraced the warrior spirit through my ayahuasca experiences. You can read that over at truthfrequencyradio.com, type in ayahuasca experiences, and you can read the other experiences that I shared in great depth and detail when I came out of the state of trance, actually during the state of trance. It was right as I was back in the physical world, but still in that in-between place, and that still a little bit there and a little bit here, but not quite in either world 100%. Shortly after, I was shown the very essence of the universe, and I was told why this universal matrix was created and how it is maintained. These were 3 large extraterrestrial beings that I just was being thrusted into, and this was after a ceremony that took place in the astral, in the hyperspace realm, where these beings were greeting me, first of all, as a warrior, and I was tearing myself apart from the inside and detaching myself from the tethers that had bound me to childhood traumas and other things that I had locked away in my consciousness. And finally, these 3 aliens showed me the universe. And I asked them, who are you? Why are you doing this? And they say, well, we didn't actually create the universe. We maintain the universe. Because if we don't maintain the universe, then the souls have nowhere to live. And they have nowhere to exist. So we create our own reality based on our perception of reality and based on what is inside of us. If we project love and light and good energy, then that's what the world around us will be. If we project darkness and hate and chaos and destruction, so shall that be too. This is exactly what these extraterrestrial beings told me. So I was being built up to become this warrior, and I had to grab the warrior spirit before the next step. I first had to experience the love and light. Then I had to experience absolute darkness. Then, when I'd been through the fire, I became the warrior. And now, I have become the shaman. My experience was one of the darkest that I've ever experienced in ayahuasca. But it had a great, great purpose. As I drifted off into hyperspace, I expected to find the same entity swirling in front of me and entertaining me in what Terence McKenna termed the nursery. There's this place where the elves will show you different things, and they treat you like a child, and it's fun and games and happiness, and it's like being in preschool. There's no evil, there's no darkness, there's none of that. And this is what a lot of people experience. Some people don't even get past the point of self-reflection, self-realization, and self-fixing. I know there's a more eloquent term for that.
Ego dissolvement.
Yeah. But once you get past that, then you get into the nursery and they show you the things in the nursery.
Mm-hmm.
This time, however, I was no longer a child in the eyes of the ayahuasca spirit. As I fell into the familiar and comfortable embrace of her loving arms once again, visions began to appear before me that shook me to the core. I found myself staring up at a man with a sword as I was bound on the ground with my hands tied behind my back. The scene looked like a countryside in another country, and the people were speaking a language I was unfamiliar with. It was either Spanish or Italian or some type of native language of brown-skinned people. There was anger, hate, chaos, and the man took a sword and swung it at me. I saw the tumbling of my head falling to the ground and rolling around as the vision faded into hyperspace. There was no blackout or lights out. I felt the warm, loving embrace of hyperspace as my consciousness floated into the swirling river of energy that is the other side. Another scene flashed before me. This time I was bound with my hands behind my back again, but I was shirtless with green military pants on. An Oriental soldier was standing in front of me with a rope. He tied the rope around my neck, then I felt a pulling as my legs lifted off the ground. As my body was twitching, again, the physical world started to fade away, or the physical vision started to fade away, and I was greeted once again by the loving embrace of the afterlife, and my consciousness became part of the astral energy flow. I couldn't understand why I was being shown these images, and I managed to open my eyes and call out to Cherie and ask her to sage me. I told her that this experience was darker than I've ever seen before, and I couldn't understand why I was seeing through the eyes of people that had been murdered in the most horrific ways. She lay her hand on my forehead and told me to embrace what I was seeing because there is a purpose to this. I closed my eyes again, wrapped the blanket tighter around myself, and prepared for what was to come. My intention with this experience was to identify and remove negative energies around me and negative energies that had attached to me. I went in there with the intention of taking a sword and cutting these demons' heads off, and also finding the source and the root of this darkness that is constantly around me and inside of me, and that people like Jeffrey Seelman and William Whitecrow and Katie Galante and others are having to pull out of me on a regular basis. And I'm trying to reflect within my own consciousness and go, what is it about what I'm doing? What am I doing here to cause all of this darkness to just attach itself to me? Jeffrey Seelman kept telling me, it's coming from your radio show. It's coming from your radio show. I asked, well, who? I thought maybe E.A. Koetting, because he's a black magician. No, it's not any individual, Chris. It's coming from the radio show. This was explained to me, and I'll explain more on the other side. Don't go anywhere. So I went into this ayahuasca trance looking to expel darkness within myself and darkness that attaches itself to me, and asking the question, what am I doing in my life to cause this darkness, to attract this darkness? Cherie came and she saged me as I was seeing through the eyes of people that have been murdered in horrible ways, and I got up. and I prepared myself to go as deep as I could. I took another dose. Immediately I purged. And so I purged the dose up. I took another dose after that. And it was funny because we made 6 doses and then realized there were only 2 of us that were drinking ayahuasca that night. And we wound up going through all 6 doses. Everything was perfect. Perfectly laid out. So I drank the other dose, closed my eyes, wrapped myself in a blanket and prepared for whatever the plant was showing me. It showed me about a dozen or more of these murders that had taken place, and I'd seen through the eyes of these people, with a recurring theme, which was the soul leaving the body, being embraced by the loving energy of the afterlife, of hyperspace, and being pulled into this energetic vortex. And I realized that after I had seen through the eyes, it was showing me, for some reason, it could have just told me, and I may have not believed it, though, if it would have told me. So maybe that's why I had to see it for myself. But it was showing me, look, the death is okay. Even the most horrible deaths in the world, it's okay. Look at what happens to the spirit. The spirit leaves peacefully, and it goes into the energetic field, into the vortex. And I guess one thing that was on my mind is the sacrifices and people that are sacrificed and entities and beings that are sacrificed in this day and age, and how horrible it must feel for them. And it was trying to reassure me, look, it's okay. It's okay. People do evil things, but the actual spirit doesn't suffer. It goes right back into the energy vortex. It's okay. It's okay. As I followed this swirling vortex of energy, I came across a sacrificial knife that was sitting right there in the middle of this energy vortex, and it was creating a barrier and redirecting some of the energy flow. And I started to realize that I was being shown how sacrifice works and how the elite see sacrifice. And it was something that Frank from Heist Click, who was over here, who also drank ayahuasca with me, we had talked about the night before when we had smoked the DMT, but this time we were going all the way into the very depths of it. And Frank was talking about this. I was shown this the next night on ayahuasca. And I was watching the energy flow go around this knife, and I realized that when they do their sacrifices, they're actually diverting the negative karma that they've created into the knife, into the sacrifice, and sending it into the energy field, and it's going around them. But what they don't realize is that this energy field is a vortex. It's a swirling vortex. It goes in a circle. It's going to come back and hit them. Now, they have to continue to do this sacrifice because not only are they diverting all the negative karma that they've created, but they're also diverting all the karma that they diverted before. And all of a sudden, this just starts building up and building up and building up and building up. Eventually, this is all going to come crashing down on them. And there's either one of two things that's going to happen. Either they're going to have to deal with everything all at once, which is going to be very horrifying and traumatic, or they're going to be crushed into oblivion like a person standing in a tidal wave, just completely crushed and expelled from the universal matrix. And maybe oblivion is what they are trying to provoke so they can avoid dealing with all the karma that they've created. I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. But what I do know is that I believe that that is why they are looking for transhumanism in the mortal life so badly, because you can only do the sacrifices here in the physical plane, so you can only divert the karma for so long. Then after the soul leaves the body, it leaves. Now, they lose a piece of themselves. They lose a piece of their souls, and they get filled with darkness every time they do one of these sacrifices, and so they all turn ugly and hideous and just golem-like, just really just ugly. And you see this everywhere with every president, senators, and people like that, CEOs. There's something inside of them that's eating them away, and it's because of losing a piece of the soul like this. So I was shown these things. And then I realized that what I was staring into was the Lucifer consciousness. And the Lucifer consciousness is the light, it is the wisdom, and I realized that we are all little Lucifers. We are the Lucifer consciousness. We are the light bearers. We're here to bring the light to people. And the Lucifer consciousness is key. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because I want to take you step by step to this. So let me stick with the Lucifer consciousness, but I do want to get into the Christ consciousness as well. These two are very interconnected. So the Lucifer consciousness is the wisdom. It's the ability to be able to see. It's the third eye being open and being able to see these things. And ultimately, there is the Christ consciousness. And the Christ consciousness, you have to go through the Lucifer consciousness in order to get to the Christ consciousness, because the Christ consciousness is not what the religions are. As a matter of fact, it went out of its way to let me know it is not Jesus Christ. It is not any of these religious things. This energy is something completely different. And I started asking the energies around me, where's all this darkness coming from? I can't take the darkness anymore. There's just so much darkness. Why is it always around me? Why is it attaching me? And it says, Chris, it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because you're doing everything right that you are attracting this kind of darkness. And I started to realize that we as light workers, light bearers, and I actually talked to some other quote-unquote light workers as well, people that do this energetic healing, and when I brought this experiences to their attention, they said, most light workers won't touch this. They said, out of the millions of light workers that are out there, there's maybe 1,000 warriors. And what I've been called to do has been something very special and very unique in the grand scheme of the energies that are actually on our side. And it does take an element of courage and an element of strength and an element of self-assurance to walk this path. And I know a lot of you out there have this in you as well. The reason that there are dark entities around us all the time is because that's our role here. Our role is to pull the dark energy into us, and then we have to understand what we do with this dark energy once we've pulled it in. And up until this point, I didn't understand how to expel this, except through Sage and with people's help like Jeffrey Silman and others like that. I couldn't figure out. I just knew that I had to keep on doing what I'm doing. I had to keep on reaching people out there, even if the darkness is attaching itself to me. But then the Christ consciousness said, hey, give it to me. That's what I'm here for. Give me the dark energy. That you grab the dark energy, I will expel it out of this universal matrix. And I realized it was through the Lucifer consciousness. The Lucifer consciousness takes us to that Christ consciousness, and we can take the negative energy from inside of us that we have absorbed from the world to balance it out, to make this world just livable for everybody else that's existing on this world. The Gaza energy especially. I've been channeling a lot of that Gaza darkness, and I've got to say, I've been in tears on many, many occasions because I feel this. And Max feels it, and many of you feel it out there, and it's really, really difficult to deal with. But what do we do with all this darkness? We pass it off to the Christ consciousness. That's what it's all about. We've got the break hitting us, so we're going to bring Dr. Joy Pugh on here in just a moment, because I have to finish this story when we get back, because it gets even broader than this. I saw even deeper than what I've gone. It's amazing. It's really amazing. We'll be right back. We're going to get Dr. Joy Pugh on at the top of the hour, because we have to keep this going. I have to finish what I'm talking about here. So what I've learned is that we have to be the conduits for this negative energy, to expel this negative energy when we have situations like Gaza, 9/11, all these horrible things that are happening all over the world. And just by doing what we're doing and just by being here, we are expelling a lot of this negative energy. The problem is a lot of us are holding it in, and we don't realize, especially because of the traps of religion, that the Christ consciousness is indeed there for us to pass this on to the Christ consciousness. Now, I didn't realize what accepting Christ into your heart was all about, because I knew that the religions were deceiving us, and so I knew that was BS in itself. But it's much deeper. I've been shown exactly what this is. And so, where do I even go with this? I guess let me stick on this. The religions have you looking at the cross. They have you looking at the crucifix in the Catholic Church. They have you focusing on the sacrifice. They don't have you focusing on what the Christ consciousness is, because they don't want you to know what the Christ consciousness is. They want you to believe that Jesus Christ was here to redeem your sins, and that you accept him into your heart to go to heaven, and that's it. Stop right there. Don't look any deeper. There is no other reason for the Christ consciousness to exist. But no. The Christ consciousness expels negative energy. But you can't go do something bad. You can't go kill somebody, then go to the Christ consciousness and say, please remove this negative karma from me, because the Christ consciousness is going to look and say, get out of here. That's not what I'm here for. The Christ consciousness is here for positive reasons, and positive reasons only. And that's even when we're pulling the negative energy out of this world and passing it on over to the Christ consciousness, we're still doing positive things, even though we're dealing with darkness. That's the yin and the yang. That's what the warrior does. We're not light workers. We're warriors. We're also healers. We're shaman. I've been shown how to heal. I've been shown how to heal the matrix code. I've been shown how to divert the energies, how to channel the energies, all kinds of things. It's absolutely amazing, the things that I've seen. But the church wants you to stop there. And so you never really realize what the Christ consciousness is, because you start to believe that you know what Christ is. And I'm using the term Christ for lack of a better term. It's not that this entity told me that it's the Christ consciousness. I just felt it and identified it as such. But it did make a distinction, because I started to get visions of the religious figure Jesus. And it was like, no. This is not what I am. I'm way, way bigger than this. So, the Lucifer consciousness, a lot of people are really confused about that as well. And a lot of people run 180 degrees away from Lucifer, or the Lucifer consciousness. Lucifer is enlightenment. Lucifer is the light in the pineal opening up. It is the connection to the Christ consciousness. They both work together. There's some religious traditions, the Mormons, for instance, who believe that Lucifer and Jesus were actually brothers. I think they were spot on with that. Of course, not in the physical sense, but I feel that they were spot on in the analysis that they both work together in unison, side by side. So now I've understood how to manipulate the code in the matrix, how to repair the code in the matrix, and how to expel this negative energy to make this planet a little more livable and a little less dense for everybody else here. And there's a few thousand of us who are doing this, and there's millions of us who are doing other similar type of energetic work, but the calling here is just so loud and so profound, and it's because, as I said before, we are creeping into Armageddon. We are at the end times. We are in the times of Revelations. Revelations is the great revealing. The apocalypse means the great revealing. And it comes from the Greek, and that everything is indeed being revealed. Why so quickly? Because we're winding down the clock and getting ready for this final battle. So I was given an even broader perspective of what was going on in the universal construct that we live in, which is the universe. And I was shown the outside of the universe, and the outside of the universe is pure darkness. I wasn't shown from a broader perspective than that, and some people would argue with me and say that what I was seeing was the universe, the void in between, the void outside of the universe, and then later there is another universe, which is basically the multiverse. So what I was seeing as far as the darkness was the space in between two universes existing in the multiverse. So I don't know if there's something beyond this darkness. All I know is that there is pure darkness out there, nothing else from what I was shown, except for some entity. I don't know what this thing was. I know that it was pure evil in the truest sense of darkness. I mean, there is nothing darker than this. Just thinking about this gives me chills. And what this entity had done is it had ripped a hole in the universal matrix. This hole was a triangle, and it was staring into our universal matrix with its one eye. It was looking with its reptilian eye. And I started to realize that is the pyramid and all-seeing eye symbolism. They've taken a symbol which is inherently good. I tapped into an energy that was sitting on a Mayan pyramid that was a pyramid with an all-seeing eye that tapped into my pineal gland and started projecting images and information and schematics for different technologies and everything else right into my brain. I wrote about this back in January when I had this experience. So there is that pyramid with the eye, but there's also this rip in our universal matrix and this reptilian entity which is trying to manifest itself in our universal matrix. It's trying to eliminate the Christ consciousness. It's coming to combat the Christ consciousness, because what it's doing right now is it's dripping or sending in negative energy, small doses of negative energy into our universal matrix, and we as light workers are able to counterbalance that negative energy and fight this negative energy. But the dripping is getting more and more and more and more, and every time they do a 9/11, every time they do a Gaza, every time they do an atomic bomb or any of this, that hole, the pyramid, gets bigger and bigger and bigger and allows this entity to manifest itself inside of our universal matrix. And what this antichrist consciousness or Satan consciousness, and again, these are just words that I'm using because they're familiar to people, and I think people can identify where I'm coming from when I use these terms. When I use the Satan term, that is the absolute darkness, that is the most evil. So this being is trying to manifest itself here to eliminate the Christ consciousness and eventually destroy the entire universal construct that we live in, the light construct, and turn that into darkness. Maybe it's like a Pac-Man type thing that's going around and eating all the little white balls or the white dots like in Pac-Man, and the universal matrix that he's trying to break into, or it's trying to break into, is just another one of those little pellets. And maybe this thing goes around the whole multiverse and starts eating up universes, and maybe that's what its role is to create all darkness out of everything. But I talked to George Kavasalis. I actually talked to him yesterday, and he opened my eyes to a few things and cleared up a few of my conceptions, or misconceptions, I should say. But one of the things we talked about last time we were on the show is how he talks about escaping the universal matrix, period. And I started thinking about this in my experience. Now, George cleared this up for me, but I'm going to tell you what I was thinking about in my experience first, which was, oh my God, there's nothing but pure evil outside of this universal construct. We can't escape the universal construct. We're not prisoners here, but it's like a fish in a fishbowl. You can take the fish out of the fishbowl, but the fish is going to die if it's not in the fishbowl. It has to have the fishbowl in order to survive, in order to live. And that's what these three extraterrestrials were telling me in the experience that I had back in January. Look, we don't create the universe, we just maintain it, because that's where souls exist. And without the universe, souls would not be able to exist. I started to see this now, and I started to understand that we're like fish in a fishbowl. George believes that he can jump out of this universal matrix and jump into another universe, maybe even a higher universe, in this infinite. That may be the case, it may not be the case, I don't know, but all I know is that there is a pure dark energy out there that is staring into a rift in our universe, which is a triangle. Its reptilian eye is looking through, and it's trying to manifest itself right here. We'll be right back.
We all had one thought. That's what we all decided.
Embrace the darkness. George said that on the show, and I just didn't understand what he was talking about. But I understand now. That's what we're here for. We're here to embrace the darkness. We're here to take the darkness by the horns and direct it to the Christ consciousness, so the Christ consciousness can expel it from our universal matrix, so we can counteract this reptilian energy that is outside of our universal construct, trying to break in here and cause death, destruction, chaos, and havoc, and all this. And all this stuff that we're experiencing, the wars and the genocide and all of this, and the people that are doing it, these people are not themselves. They're puppets. And we've all known that they've been used like puppets, but I've seen the energy flow and how this entity from outside is injecting bits and pieces of itself, which are grabbing on and taking control of some of these world leaders, even regular people too, soldiers and other people like that, and causing people to do this. And the energy flow is getting so intense right now, and the dripping into our universal construct is getting more intense and more intense and more intense, that it's starting to affect people up and down the line. Children are setting animals on fire. They're setting themselves on fire and posting it on Facebook. We talked about this in the first hour. That's where all this is coming from. People are eating each other's faces off. People are creating this whole lack of empathy within themselves for children that are kidnapped and being brought through our borders to be sold as sex slaves. They're looking at them as invaders, and they're evil, and kill, and go back to your hole and die, and all this terrible, terrible stuff. It's not the people on this world. It's this dark energy that's coming through into this. I've seen it. I understand the purpose now. There will be tests. There have been tests, and the tests keep on getting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. We've been reunited with a lot of our soul family. People that I had no idea where I was so connected to. Frank Castle, Bliss of Critical Contact. They were both here for the experience. They both were here just coincidentally in Denver at the exact same time. They both came over. Then it turns out that they were both playing at the same club. Frank was doing 2 shows, and one of the shows that he was doing was coincidentally the same one as Bliss was doing. And we were all here, and it was like the tribe was reunited again. Nathan Frazier is going to be over here in a few days as well. And the people we're meeting right now, and the energies that are just being drawn to us right now. And it's so funny because I went through several years of being completely disconnected from everybody. We would have listeners writing us, hey, Chris and Cherie, I want to meet you, I want to meet you, I want to meet you. There was Laura Bruce, and much love to you, Laura, for sure. But she was the first person that we actually allowed in our circle, because prior to that, the people we had allowed in our circle were there to try to destroy everything that was us. And they failed miserably. And they're reaping the consequences of their actions now through their own karma. But we started meeting people and realizing, no, not everybody is a serial killer psycho, as we first encountered when we stepped into this arena. And the energies are just so beautiful now. But I realized the purpose. I had to disconnect myself so I can build myself up, so I can go through the fire, so I can do all of this. So then, once I'm vibrating and radiating at the proper frequency, then the other frequencies will start to come together. I've been connected to Frank since the beginning of Truth Frequency. I just didn't even know it. I've only talked to Frank a few times. But he does the outro song in the 3rd hour, All Along the Watchtower. And that's the only thing in our show that has stayed constant in the 5 years of broadcasting. We've changed all of our intros, and I like to change them up to keep them fresh. We changed all our bumper music. I like to keep them fresh. The only thing that we've kept constant is that outro for some reason, so we've always been connected to that energy. But it wasn't until all of us got together that all these realizations and journeys began to take place. And I can't go into detail about what happened afterwards, because Frank experienced something in the music industry that he doesn't want to talk about right now. And he told me in confidence, and so I can't talk about it in detail. And I apologize. I don't like to keep things to myself, but if somebody asks me in confidence to keep something, I have to keep it in confidence. But let me just put it like this. My intention for Frank and for Bliss, once they left here, was to help both of them elevate both of them in the music industry. And my intentions came to pass, like literally just a few hours after I put the intention out there. I mean, this was the first sign of, look what you can do. Look at the power that you have created here just by being selfless. You're also helping yourself by being selfless. I know it's very, very hard to understand. Let me try to explain without divulging any of the secrets. Frank was on tour with Wu-Tang, and Born Divine was at one of the clubs. Bliss was playing at the other one. Frank played at the other one. And I was watching Bliss on stage, and after he came off, I said, oh my God, dude, you are talented. And I'm going through the guest list in my head, and I'm going, who do I know in the music industry that can make this connection for Bliss? You know, we got to help this guy out, et cetera, et cetera. And sure enough, Wu-Tang was at the other club. And so I grabbed Bliss by the ear like a little brother. I said, dude, come on, we got to go. He's like, well, I'm just some white kid. I'm going to go give him my CD, et cetera, et cetera. I said, Bliss, stop being afraid of success, dude. Come on, let's go right now. So we went over there. I go up to Born Divine and I asked him, hey, I really want you to see what my friend can do. And what do I need to do to get him on stage? He turns to me. He says, have me on your radio show. I said, done. Of course. I'd be honored to have you on my radio show. He gave me his phone number, gave me his email address, all that stuff. Then he comes up and he goes up to Bliss and says, are you ready? And he's like, yeah. And so he starts announcing him, give it up for Bliss, blah, 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 blah. Bliss goes up there and just wrecks it. It was amazing. I mean, the fire that I saw coming out of this kid was just amazing. And he was having a little hard time hearing himself in the monitors. And so the song that he performed wasn't as good as when he performed it at the other club. However, Bliss had the intuition enough to just start doing a freestyle a cappella after all the music was turned off. At that point, Born Divine turned and looked at him and said, oh my God, this kid is talented. He goes up to him and he says, man, that was amazing. As it turns out, Wu-Tang is also very heavily into the esoterics too. And when Frank started talking to Wu-Tang about this stuff, suddenly the relationship with them changed. And they looked at Frank and said, oh, so you're in the know now. And Frank's even more connected in the music industry, in the music scene. Bliss also has a connection now that I'm hoping is going to turn into something beautiful for them. And we get to have Wu-Tang on our show. Mm-hmm. And all this came to us because of the acts of selflessness. I wasn't thinking to myself, how am I going to help myself? I was thinking, how am I going to help these two? And wound up the universe just boom, turn around immediately and said, we're going to help you out. Now you're connected to these people too. And the respect that I got from Born Divine was awesome. It really was. It was like, well, just have me on your radio show. Wow. Really? You know about my radio show? I'm just in awe as to, the way everything happened. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned there is when we start acting selflessly, the universe actually turns around and takes care of you. And it very well should. I think that everybody walking the path should be taken care of by the universe. And I know that it's the universe working through all the members of truthfrequencyradio.com and through the people who have given donations and all of that have helped to create all of this. And the universe says, look, you just build it. I'll make sure they come. And I'll make sure that it's all paid for and taken care of. And you'll be taken care of through your selfless good works and kind acts. And it's just like, the intention manifesting itself so quickly in front of me is just an amazing, amazing thing to see. So I hope that I've been able to inspire everybody with some of these experiences. And when you're experiencing that darkness out there, when you feel that darkness attached to you, it's okay. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. That's what we're here for. We're here to pull that darkness. What we have to do now is we have to connect through that Christ consciousness. I'm back to the religious things. I know we're running out of time here, but I do want to make this point too. On the surface, you have Jesus Christ and the Vatican. That's a deception. You feel the deception. You start digging deeper and go, wait a minute, these people are Luciferians. So boom, they got you in two different ways right there.
In an emergency situation,
They make you look away from Lucifer and they make you look away from Christ. And then you're lost, just like I was. But the point is that these people are not Luciferians, they're not Christians, they are pure Satanists being controlled by this external entity that is peering into our universal matrix through a triangular hole, and its eye is looking right at us. We'll see you tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. We do have another jam-packed hour for you at truthfrequencyradio.com. We're going to speak with Dr. Joy Pugh, commercial-free, right on the other side. We love you.
Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.